So let's again start with, oh, I gotta fix my internet, sorry. Okay, so please close your eyes and relax in your seat. And take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And then a slow, leisurely exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the mouth and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace, if thoughts should enter your head, just observe them and watch them pass, like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, think to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Well, friends, to situate us, we are in our second week of focusing on the soul trait of trust, or Bitachon. We will not have a meeting next week. I will be visiting my in-laws in Phoenix. So looking forward to that. I haven't seen them in over a year. And then we'll be back the following week where we'll start focusing on the soul trait of faith. So now it's time for a check-in. And for those of you who've been here, we're here last week or watched the recording, we're just sort of checking in and seeing maybe how our Mussar practice showed up. So I'm wondering, how did trust show up for you? And we had a suggested practice, which was to look and see, to take an everyday activity and to maybe stop and reflect. Was that something that was being driven by trust or despair? Okay, so I'm going to stop the share for a moment. And I would love to hear, how did, would anyone like to share a check-in? Yeah, Nancy.
I'm not sure if this follows trust, but I'm just trusting in healing and that everything will be okay. And I have bone on bone knees. And now that the pandemic has lifted a bit, where the restrictions, I actually joined a senior center last week, and and then I'm a part of a kind of like a health support group, and I met a personal trainer. So now I have a personal trainer, and I've just trusted that somehow something is going to work. And the personal trainer saw my instability and that I need to be taught how to walk like a baby again. And so I woke up the next morning with absolutely no pain in my knees. I have now, since I joined the senior center, I am going to 3 exercise classes a week. I was not able to walk out my front door. So I'm trusting, and if this is the divine intervention working within my life, I am thrilled. So to me, it is a form of trust.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing that, Nancy. Absolutely. You kind of put yourself out there a little bit. You know, took a risk and you took some initiative as well. It's balancing, as we'll see, you know, it's a balancing act, but it's just having faith that things are going to work out. So that is great. Carol.
Well, I had to trust quite a bit yesterday. Of course, every time I get on a horse, there's trust involved there because that's a dangerous sport, as we all know. It can be a dangerous activity. But I've been so sick the days before. I was finally starting to feel almost human by Tuesday. So yesterday I said, I need to trust myself. Am I ready to get back on a horse or am I not? And I said, yeah, I think I am. I think I can manage. Am I going to be strong enough to do this or am I going to get myself in trouble? And then I thought, is there even going to be a horse that's suitable for me to ride out there on the string? Because, you know, during the summer, since we're kind of the advanced adult class, they throw all the new horses at us. And we never know what we're getting. I used to love that. I'd say, somebody say, want to take this new guy? Yeah, I'll take him. I don't care. But now I can't do that because of the business with my spine. So I got up there. Sure, the only horse up there that I knew that would be available was that guy behind me, Smokey, who was Mr. Tricky. But he's safe. He's safe and he's easy to sit. So I rode him and I had one of the best rides last night. Smokey likes to strike off on the wrong lead both directions, which can be a little unsafe because it's a balance thing. He took them both correctly last night. First try, didn't break on me, nothing. And I'm going, either I'm doing something right or, you know, the universe is looking out for me. Because he was great. He was lovely last night. And he can be, as I say, he's safe. He's not going to buck. He's not going to spook or take off with me or anything. But he has his little tricks. And he wasn't, once we established he was going to turn when I wanted him and not when he wanted to, we were good. So yeah, trust. And you have to trust the horse that you're riding a little bit, not to be crazy. And also trust your instincts to feel if the horse is going to be crazy, you know, to feel if something's going to go wrong. So anyway, a lot of trust involved in that sport.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Carol. Thank you for sharing that. Others, would anyone else like to check in?
Hi, it says Kina, but I'm actually Eliana in this milieu. I have lost my unemployment, so I have to trust that all these applications for jobs is going to come to fruition, but I am usually in despair every time I get a rejection. So I'm on a seesaw of trust, of trying to make myself feel trust and trust to God and that he will take care of me. But then I feel despair. So.
Well, thank you, Eliana. We listen with an open heart and are there with you as you go through this process. Yeah, Nancy. Just remember to unmute.
Thank you. That just reminded me, and I guess I just didn't really put too much emphasis on it. But yesterday I got a call from my boss and my position has been terminated for good now.
Oh.
And I have been out of work since March 13th of 2020. And he's kept calling me like, are you interested in coming back? And I said, yes. And they just decided, they had a meeting and just decided they don't need me. So now it's interesting kind of putting that trust out there. Like, it wasn't a shock to get the call, but it was now finite. And now I have to trust that my world will, because now I'm officially retired basically. And that scared me. And so now, you know, it all kind of came together because I joined the senior center. So I'm going to all these classes and I'm getting involved in a lot of things. So it's interesting how it kind of synced together. But I mentioned I had to be honest with my husband last night, and I said, I guess you need to know this is what happened. And he said to me, the first thing out of his mouth, well, then look for another job now. And it's like, wow. I mean, there's like no support. So I just need now the trust of something and the support of something to get me through this, that this may, you know, no one's going to hire me at my age. So it's a difficult time, but I'm actually looking forward to this and see what happens. I just want the support from my husband.
Mm. Well, thank you, Nancy. We're listening with an open heart, and we'll be there with you as you go through these next stages as well. Anyone else care to check in? Okay. Well, let us delve back into trust. To review again, this is from an abbreviated version of what we looked at last week. May I have a volunteer to read the bullets, please? I can't see all of you, so feel free to just unmute and jump in. Yeah, Harry?
Yeah, Bitachon may be one of the most difficult middo to require. Cultivating Bitachon means moving towards balancing trust in a loving God or a life or universe with taking initiative. You never have to believe something you actually don't believe to grow in Bitachon.
Thank you. Thank you, Harry. And it continues, and my addendum to this is, if you're unsure of the divinity, you can think of it as trust in the universe, as Rabbi Jaffe said, or trust that doing the right thing will work out okay in the end. And why is this? Why does he say that this is difficult? Do you agree that this is difficult? Why is this hard?
Because you have to jump into the unknown. If you are in disbelief, you have to, like what he says, you don't have to believe to do the action, but that's the hard thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And there's kind of a jumping in a little bit here. And Joanne, did you want to add something, or were you just unmuting?
I'm thinking about it. I mean, I think it's like a tricky thing, you know. I had my experience. Okay, so I tend to try to have trust that, you know, this is the old Jewish, you know, whatever happens is for the best, whether it's positive or not so positive. And so recently I inherited a car and a cat. And the cat and I are getting to know each other. The car is older than the car I had, but it was a nicer model. And then, like, since I got this car, I've had 2 mishaps in parking lots. And the second one, and now I need a new bumper on this vehicle. So on the other side of it is, so my son told me that his father, my ex, would buy the car I don't need anymore. So I had money coming in from that, and now I'm figuring, you know, some of that's going to go out again with this bumper. And I have this history of, I don't know, my car taking hits for me. That's what one of my rabbis told me. Maybe the car's taking, you know, gets hit in a parking lot, or somebody backs into it, or I do something stupid, you know. And so and so it's a two-way street, gotta be careful. I gotta look both ways. I've been honking my horn because my old car used to make a beeping sound when you back up. This doesn't.
Mm.
And I don't trust the universe that much that, I don't think Hashem's gonna protect me if I don't look over my shoulder to see what's actually coming. That's there's a reality that, you can have faith, but, praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. That's, I don't know, something like that.
All right, thank you, Joanne. Yeah, no, I like that. Hashem's not gonna move something out of the way if you don't look over your shoulder. We have our part to do, and but I think it's very hard. We live in a very rationalist world, both in America and in probably most of the Judaism that we've been exposed to and that we're a part of. And so to give up control can be a little bit hard, to sort of go outside of the rational sometimes. That can be a little bit hard as well. And that is, and our fear neurons are very strong. We are programmed to sort of, by evolution, to be afraid of stuff a little bit. So to use trust as a means of gathering courage and be like, all right, I'm getting up on the horse, and if it happens, I'm backing up, and I'll honk my horn, but I got to see what happens. And we get a fender bender, and all right, well, this other chunk of money suddenly showed up to help offset that. So it's a very different way of thinking about things.
Mhm.
I'm thinking also about trusting the universe, but also trusting yourself.
Mm.
And that's something that comes up for me when I think about what I did yesterday. Did I trust myself enough to make the right decision? What if I'd made the right decision and a wrong decision and suddenly had a terrible dizzy spell in the middle of my ride? Well, I trust my riding instructor enough to kind of look out for me. But even so, do I trust myself to make my own decision? And I hear echoes of that in what some other people have said as well.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Carol. And I think that's a part of it. And I think that's one of the things we touched on last week also, was that sometimes trusting in the divine can be a way of sort of helping trust ourselves too. That we have a divine within, and we also, if we sort of feel supported, that can help us move forward. Let's go in a little bit deeper here. I want to continue. I think next I have us continuing a slide that we began last week, and this was from the Mussar Torah commentary. This essay was written by Rabbi Deborah Kassoff, who, and this is sort of right at one of the last, parts of the book of Deuteronomy. And Moses has sort of come to the end of his life. He's been told he's not going to enter the promised land. He's sort of given up on asking. And he's starting to, and we sort of started talking about this, it's a small portion, but 3 times, he tells various people to be strong and resolute. And so maybe we have a volunteer to read these last 2 bullets, which begin until.
I can do it.
Thanks, Eliana.
Until Moses has himself achieved Bitachon, he cannot internalize his own wisdom, which is maybe why he failed to teach it to the Israelites. What has changed? For one thing, Moses has accepted his pressing appointment with death. Moses feels that whatever mistakes he has made, whatever apparent missteps and injustices he has suffered, he has served his purpose well.
Thank you. I found this very powerful. What are some of the ways that Moses has changed, according to Rabbi Kassoff? maybe starting with the first bullet, what do we make of it when it says, until he's achieved Bitachon, he cannot internalize his own wisdom, which is maybe why he failed to teach it to the Israelites. I think earlier in this, she wrote that, she's been telling the Israelites all through the book of Numbers, ever since the Exodus, hey, just trust in God, everything's going to be fine, you'll have food. And again, people are afraid, they're doubting, whatever. And here it's almost like they're saying maybe he couldn't teach it because he didn't feel it.
Well, listen, in the beginning, if I recall, he didn't feel worthy to be the leader.
Mm.
And
That's right.
He stuttered, and why me? And so that's probably why he never thought he was worthy. And now evidently he's feeling, now that he's coming to the end of his life, he's now realizing, hey, I did a pretty good job, and maybe I am worthy. That's sort of my capsulation of that thought, or that segment, I should say.
Yeah, thank you, Harry. I think that's well said.
Doesn't seem to me that Moses trusted the Israelites very much. He treated them like children, and they were always messing up, and he was always saying, do it this way and do it that way, and why are you like this, and slamming around. And perhaps in gaining his own trust, he could say, just be strong and resolute, just this is all there is. And maybe he realizes that for himself as well.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. It's like sometimes people, they don't need to hear like a lot of detail, a lot of this and that. It's like, you got this. I trust you. Hang in there. You got this. You can do this.
I think also Moses didn't trust himself. He did not have confidence in himself to lead until later, because he denies that he's a leader initially. He says, why me? I can't even do this. I can't even speak well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm wondering if any of you, in your experience, if you sort of, this resonates with maybe some experiences from your own life where at some stage initially, maybe there was more self-doubt, and then later as you gained confidence, it became easier to lead others, it became more possible to do things.
Yeah, sure. As a teacher, my first couple of years in the classrooms, like, I'm a big fake, aren't I? Probably my first 5. I'm a big fake. I really am not very good at this. And who am I fooling? And what am I doing here? But by the time I retired, I have some pretty good confidence in my teaching chops. I am not saying I was like the world's greatest teacher or anything, but I knew what I was doing.
Yeah, thank you, Carol. There's something that comes, a confidence that comes from experience and being able to pass that on to others. All right, let's go back now to the second. Yeah, I think, for the second part, I think Harry's comment was really on point, that it was like, okay, I've done an okay job of this. And I think there's a certain trust in that as well. I know I have this terrible habit of, whenever something happens, my first thought is, oh my God, I screwed up somehow. Even things that had like nothing to do with me, really, like on a rational level. But it's like, oh, I must have really, blown it here or something. It's like, well, how did you blow it? You called somebody out of the blue and it was a bad time. That's not really blowing it. That's just, being able to call again. So I think it is powerful to be able to cultivate this trust in ourselves, and to be able to recognize kind of the experiences we've had, to kind of defang some of these stories we tell ourselves sometimes.
Mhm, mhm.
All right, let's dig in a little deeper. This next reading, this is a little bit about trust and relationships. And this one's a little bit thick, so it may take us a little while to go through it, but let's see where it takes us. So a volunteer to get us started reading this, please.
Sure, I'll volunteer. One who trusts in God will not submit to another. She will not set her hopes on any person or put her trust in human beings. She will not be subservient to them in order to win their favor, nor will she flatter them. She will not agree with them in what is not in the service of God. Their ways will not frighten her, and she will not be afraid to oppose them.
Okay, thanks. Let's pause here.
That's tense.
Okay, so this is from Duties of the Heart, which was written in the 11th century in Spain, originally written in Judeo-Arabic. The Oxford Bodleian Library has one of the first Hebrew translations of this from this kind of created in about 1160. So, and here we are still reading it. So what are the benefits of trusting in God according to Rabbi Ibn Pakuda? What is this? What benefits does that have or how does that impact kind of the way we relate to other people?
Can I speak?
Yeah,
It sounds like she or he's saying that you put your trust in God and not in other human beings, and don't make yourself subservient to them, and don't flatter them. And it's like it's between you and God. It's not, don't trust another human being. Don't idolize them. They're fallible. There's a psalm that says something like this also. One of the Psalms of David. And then you're not beholden to somebody else, to other people or a other person. And it makes you more powerful, actually, to act and follow your beliefs, your own value system. That's what it means to me.
Yeah, thank you, Joanne. That's very powerful, and what you're saying toward the end, like it's following your own value system. And someone says, hey, you should really do this. And don't you think that's a great idea? And
yeah.
Well, okay.
Could I talk?
Please.
That is very apropos in our times, but I'm afraid to oppose the rabid right, so that must mean that I'm not trusting in God. But I think that might be what that means, that we don't accept that human beings have power over us, that it's our trust in God is what is important and what protects us. But I have a lot of fear, and I don't know that I'm doing this at all. So.
Yeah, no, that's a really important challenge to this, because there are sort of fearful times, and there are things that, a lot of people across the political spectrum they're afraid of us, we're afraid of them. There's a lot of division, and there's a lot of, reasons why we should be concerned. Or are there? How might this help? If we were to take this sort of attitude and say, okay, if we put more trust in God, how might that impact how we approach some of these political challenges or fears that we might have about the country or whatever they may be? Yeah, Linda.
I hope this is not sounding like blasphemy, but what does it mean to people to say, trust in God?
What does it mean to you?
Depends on what day you ask me, what chair I'm sitting in at the time. I don't think that I fight as much with maybe trust in the universe.
Mhm.
I don't know if I can go any further than that.
Okay. Well, one of the reasons on we go back a couple of slides here. I put at sort of the bottom of the slide, if you're unsure of divinity, you can think of it as trust in the universe, the trust that doing the right thing will work out okay in the end. And then I say we add to that, sort of partly addressing Eliana's point, that we also need to look over our shoulder when we're backing up. If we go to a rally of violent, angry people and start arguing with them,
Not a good idea.
may not be a safe thing to do.
Right.
But if we're like in a neighborhood where there hasn't been a mugging in 20 years and we see something on TV about muggings and that makes us afraid to go out and take a walk around the block, maybe that's a time where we need to cultivate some more trust in the universe.
Greg, I recoiled from this when I first read it because it said, do not trust other human beings. And over the last year, I've worked on that particular thing of being able to trust people more.
Mm-hmm.
But then I thought, perhaps it's not about personal trust. Like, I trust you to show up every week for Mussar if that's what you say you're going to do, because that isn't trust. Or my group trusts me to show up to lead the group. It's more like, again, what's already kind of been said, don't trust what goes against your own moral compass because somebody else says so. And I think of that moral compass, that maybe is God. I don't know. Again, what does it mean what does God mean? What does it mean to trust in God?
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful formulation. I really like that. It's sort of, and I agree with you, because when I was reading this, and I'm going, oh my goodness, what do I make of this? What is everybody going to make of this? But I said, there's something here that's worth exploring. And I think you said that well, because it is, we're talking about flattering people, I remember when I interviewed someone for my first book, and they said that they ended up really getting bullied by their boss. And what they said was, I should have known better because this person was really unethical in the way they dealt with the vendors. And I should have known that I should have walked away then, because this wasn't someone, this person was doing things against their value system. But they ended up sort of staying in that job and staying in that relationship. And suddenly, and that's where maybe you're forced by a power relationship for flattery, and ended up being sort of afraid to quit. And that's sort of where, I think they lost their way a little bit and ended up in a very painful and damaging situation. I don't know if that makes any sense. Frank, I saw you sitting forward. I didn't know if you had something to say or just sitting forward.
One of the things that I'm kind of mulling over right now is especially in recent years, last 5-6 years, when I would get into a tussle with somebody, I would make it a point to deal with it, trusting that that's the right thing to do. I remember years ago I had a disagreement with somebody, and by engaging them, it had to do with I don't even remember. Had to do with cooperative housing.
Hmm.
And somehow we were, some were different. And by engaging this person, what happened was we became closer.
Hmm.
And so I think what we're saying here is that trusting our intuition, trusting the universe, trusting God, um, is really a way to not only be true to ourselves, but to be true to the people that we care about, and even those people who may be able to care about.
Hmm.
Uh, so there's some real what's the word? I mean, that's the way that's the way we understand trust.
Hmm. Yeah.
This is not, it's not easy, but it's so formidable that when it's engaged, it's you're rewarded, and both parties are rewarded.
Yeah,
So
thank you, Frank. I think that really fits with this because in some ways, or in a lot of ways, it takes courage to engage someone when we have a tussle with them, rather than just be like, okay, forget it. I'm going to engage. And then when you have the courage to do that, in your experience, that's led to becoming closer with this person, to being led to a stronger relationship. This third bullet here, but God Hashem helps me, therefore I was not humiliated, therefore I have set my face like a flint, and I know that I will not be timid. And that has to do with, there was a prior point up here about, not being afraid to offend people or not being afraid to disagree with people. But, the part about not being timid, sometimes we need to, if we feel, again, emotionally supported by the divine or by the universe, it can help us, gain courage to lean into more difficult conversations. Harry.
Yeah, I have an interesting story regarding trust, I believe. I had lunch with an owner of a business who purchased my business a couple of years ago. And he told me the story that when the market was falling apart last March, he applied for a PPP loan, which is loan for businesses that are suffering. At the time, his business was suffering, but he got the approval like 3 or 4 months later, where the business had recovered. But he was going to be rewarded with several $100,000 of money. And the question is, should he accept it? Knowing that the situation has changed. And so he had a moral dilemma. And he thought about the businesses that have suffered, that need the money, and that he doesn't. And he trusted that by refusing the money, which he did, that he will be somehow rewarded in some place, but probably in his heart, and definitely by his staff and his partners who applauded that act. And so that was an interesting, I guess, experience of trust. And it wouldn't have been anything wrong for him to take that money because the government allowed it. They never, at the time that the money was approved, there was that situation. But by the time he applied, that was the situation. By the time it was approved, it had changed. And it didn't really matter. So that's another interesting discussion of trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of brings forth an interesting feature of Mussar as well, which is, going beyond the letter of the law to the spirit of the law, and would have been absolutely perfectly legal. But it's like, this wasn't something that was comfortable for your partner's moral compass. It's like, some people really need this money, and I no longer need it the way that I did when I applied a couple months ago. So let's let's forego it and trust that the business is going to be okay and that this can get to some of the people who need it. And
Right.
then it will work out okay for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Linda, did I see your hand?
This is backtracking a little, I realize, but I was thinking about your question of my question. What does trust in God mean? And I came up with, if a person believes that the universe was created by God or a God, then I would fit in with, I trust that sun is going to rise or however it makes its appearance, and it's going to set however it does that. And the moon also will continue in its orbit. So if I trust in those things and trust that God created them, then ...
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing that, Linda. And I think it's so important to wrestle with these things and to try to come up with our own answers and our own ways of approaching them. Okay, well, this conversation we've been having is a very good segue to our breakouts today. Our question, so you'll each have an opportunity to join a room with one other group. And the question is, we've been talking about this timidity confidence continuum. Where is it that you sit from being timid to being confident? And is there one thing you could do to become more confident? Or maybe if you're overly confident, what's one thing you can do to have a more balanced approach?
Mm.
So again, this is I put the question in the chat. So again, this is a no judgment zone. We're not here to give each other advice. We're really here just to kind of listen and accompany people on their journey and let them be heard. And you'll have maybe two or 3 minutes each. So, all right, what happened? There's the breakout rooms. Okay, so the breakout rooms are now open. So just click the button on your screen. Okay, and let's see, let me stop the share. I'm gonna pause the recording.